Okay. All right, it is time. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Wednesday webinar. Today, we are going to talk about whether or not it's possible to receive Social Security disability benefits if you have never worked. Ooh, there we go. Our roadmap for today, we will start out by talking about some Social Security disability basics, and then we'll get into more specifics on SSDI benefits and more specifics on SSI benefits. And then, of course, we'll close out the webinar the same way we always do, which is how an attorney might be able to help you with your Social Security disability case. Before we get started, a little bit about me. My name is Caitlin Wildoner. I'm the founding attorney of Beacon Disability, a law firm based in Florida, where we exclusively practice federal administrative disability law and assist clients with their agency-level SSDI and SSI cases. I also want to mention that because SSDI and SSI cases are so specific to the facts of each individual case, today's webinar is not legal advice. My videos never are. They're just kind of additional information to give you a little bit of extra background in better understanding a Social Security disability claim. So with that being said, I also do not take questions on the live webinar, and I do not respond to super specific questions in the comments for the replay. And the reason for that is because, like I said, every case is so fact specific that it's hard for me to give good advice without knowing the totality of the situation. And so what I usually recommend is there is a link on the replay and there is a link in the chat on the live that will allow you to schedule a call with us. At the end of the webinar, I will also share our phone number, and I believe our website is on there as well. But please feel free to reach out, either schedule a call or give us a call. And that way, you and I can have a conversation and see if something that I might be able to shed a little bit more light on after getting some additional facts. Okay, here we are, Social Security disability basics. So as I alluded to previously, there are two different Social Security disability programs. There's Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI benefits, and there's Supplemental Security Income, or SSI benefits. Both programs are going to require that you be disabled and unable to work for a period of at least 12 months. Where they differ is with SSDI benefits, you do have to have sufficient work credits. With SSI benefits, you do not have to have sufficient work credits, but you do have to have below a certain threshold of income and assets. So as today we're talking about, can you receive Social Security disability if you've never worked? You can likely not receive SSDI benefits if you've never worked. We'll talk about some exceptions to that in a few minutes. But you may be eligible for SSI benefits if your income and asset are below the threshold. And of course, you've got to be disabled and unable to work for a period of at least 12 months due to your physical and or mental impairments. So the way Social Security defines disability, they will only pay total disability. They don't pay any benefits if you have a partial disability or a short-term disability. So you must be totally disabled and unable to work, again, for a period of at least 12 months. So as it says here, to be found disabled under SSA rules, you cannot do work or engage in any substantial gainful activity because of your medical conditions. You must not be able to do work that you did previously, or you must not be able to adjust to other work as a result of your medical conditions, and your condition has to have already lasted or be expected to last at least 1 year, or if it's expected to last less than 1 year, then it needs to be expected, unfortunately, to result in death. When Social Security receives an application for disability benefits, they will first first they'll look to see, do you meet the non-disability, the non-medical requirements? Do you meet the income and asset thresholds for SSI? Do you have the work history requirement for SSDI? If you don't qualify under SSDI or SSI, and you want to make sure that you've applied under the correct program. So if you submit an SSDI application, but you've never worked, and you don't also submit an SSI application, Social Security does not often proactively reach out to you and say, hey, you don't qualify for this, but you might qualify for this. Would you like to apply? You have to be the one that kind of applies for both. If you are applying for SSDI benefits online, there is a question that will ask you if you intend to apply for SSI. And so that is kind of a reminder to you that you want to reach out to Social Security to make sure that they also get that SSI application. So if you can qualify for the non-medical, either you have the work credits under SSDI or you're below the income and asset thresholds for SSI, then Social Security will move to their 5-step evaluation process. And the very first thing they look at is, are you engaging in substantial gainful activity? Are you working 20 hours a week or more? Are you earning more than $1,350 a month? Now, in January in 2023, that amount does go up to $1,470 a month. But either way, that's what Social Security is looking at. Are you working 20 hours a week, or are you earning above that SGA threshold? If you are, then Social Security will not evaluate your claim any further. They will say you are engaging in substantial gainful activity, and therefore, by our definition, you cannot be found disabled. If you are not engaging in substantial gainful activity, Social Security moves to step 2, and they look at your medical file and they see, okay, do you have at least one severe medically determinable impairment? If you do not have any severe medically determinable impairments, the evaluation stops there and Social Security will deny the case. If you have at least one severe medically determinable impairment, Social Security will move to step 3 and they will look at the records to see, do you meet or equal one of the listings in their Blue Book? If you do meet or equal one of the listings, the analysis stops there and Social Security will approve the claim for benefits. If you do not meet or equal one of the listings, the case will continue to step 4. And what happens at step 3B, kind of, if you will, is Social Security will have created a residual functional capacity, or an RFC, for you. Based on the medical records, that is what Social Security believes you are capable of doing on a daily basis. And so they will take that RFC and they will determine, can an individual with this RFC return to your past relevant work? If you can go back to your past relevant work with your RFC, Social Security finds you to not be disabled, you will get a denial, and they will say you can go back to your past relevant work, you're not disabled. If you cannot go back to your past relevant work, Social Security moves to step 5. Using that same RFC, they will also pull in your age, your education level, and your past work and any skills that you may have gathered from your past work. And they will look to see, can you engage in any other work that exists in the national economy? If you can, if there are other jobs that exist in the national economy that you can perform, Social Security will again deny your case and say you are not disabled because you can perform this, that, and the other job. If you cannot engage in any other work based on your age, RFC, education, and transferable skills analysis, then Social Security will find you to be disabled at step 5. So that's the 5-step evaluation process. Those are the couple of ways that you can win, and then of course the couple of ways that you will result in a denial. Okay, so SSDI. So this is the program, remember, that you have to have sufficient work credits. So again, you must be disabled and unable to work for a period of at least 12 months. As I said before, those 12 months don't have to pass before you apply for SSDI benefits, but the medical records have to indicate that your condition is expected to prevent you from working for at least 12 months. So with SSDI, you can apply as soon as you have a diagnosis, as soon as you go through, whatever it is that you're going through, once you realize that you're not going to return to work in a couple of months. The other component is you have to have sufficient work credits. The number of work credits you have to have does depend on your age. Generally, though, you need 40 total credits, 10 years of work. So you generally will have to have worked for 10 years, and 20 of those credits must have been earned in the last 10 years, ending with the year your disability begins. So we generally will say that you have to have worked 5 of the last 10 years. If you call in and you and I are having a conversation, you will hear me ask, when did you last work? Okay, and had you worked full-time before then? Trying to understand when your 5 of the last 10 years was, if it was, okay? So younger workers might qualify for SSDI benefits with fewer credits. If you have specific questions about that, if you're under age 30 and you have specific questions about that, reach out to me, send us an email, and we can send you the link to the Social Security Administration's website where you can see how many credits you need based on your age. It has to do with the time you've worked, the time. It's a little more complex. It's not super complex, but it's a little more complex than what I want to get into on the webinar. So like I said, if you're under 30 and you have questions about how the credits work for SSDI, just reach out to us and happy to either hop on the phone with you or send you an email with that link. In 2022, you earned 1 credit for every $1,510 in wages or self-employment income you earned. So once you earned $6,040 for the year, you've earned your 4 credits. Next year, the value of 1 credit does go up in 2023. I cannot remember what it is off the top of my head right now, but it does. It goes up most years. I don't want to say every year. Income and assets do not matter. So for SSDI, income and assets do not matter. You can have retirement accounts. You can have 10 homes throughout the United States. You can have a luxury vehicle in each of those garages. Income and assets do not matter for SSDI qualification. In fact, I often recommend to people that as soon as you realize that you are not going to be able to return to work, apply for SSDI, even if you think financially you don't need it. Because you can go through assets real quick. And because of the work credit requirement, you want to make sure you're applying in a decent time frame for a couple reasons. Number one, to make sure you still qualify for SSDI, but also to make sure the medical records still exist. If you don't apply for SSDI for another decade, trying to find records, a decade from now, from today, is really hard. So try, as soon as you realize you're not going to be able to go back to work, start thinking about applying for SSDI if you have the work history. All right, here's probably why you're here. SSI benefit requirements. So SSI does not require you to have a work history. So SSI is how you can receive Social Security disability benefits without ever having worked. With SSI, again, you must be disabled and unable to work for a period of at least 12 months. Again, those 12 months don't have to pass before you can apply. And in fact, with SSI, it's important to apply earlier. With SSI benefits, Social Security cannot pay benefits prior to the date of your application. So let's say you were in a terrible, terrible car accident in February of 2021. You sought treatment, you treated. In June, it was pretty clear that you were not going to be able to return to work. So that was 4 months after the car accident. Had you applied sometime between February and June, that would have been when Social Security could have started paying benefits, provided they found you to be disabled. However, you did not apply until June of this year, June of 2022. Social Security cannot go back and pay you starting in February, or even starting in last June, when you realized that you weren't going to be able to go back to work. The earliest they can pay you SSI benefits is going to be the month you apply, which is going to be June. And that's if you apply on the 1st. So with SSI, as I mentioned earlier, you do have to have limited income and assets. You cannot have more than $2,000 in assets if you are single, and you cannot have more than $3,000 in assets if you are married. I'll talk about countable assets in a minute. What I will say about limited income, it does depend on a couple different factors, including how many children live at home, all of that good stuff. If you are under the asset threshold, I will almost always recommend, unless it's clear, you've got a spouse or a significant other that's making, 6 figures a month, less than that really. But, if they're making good money, and then it's unlikely that you would apply and it's just the two of you, or qualify, not apply. If it's just the two of you and your spouse is making $5,000 a month, that might not be something that I would say, yes, you should apply. But if it's kind of on the cusp, and especially if you've got kids at home, I will almost always say, just apply. The worst thing that's going to happen is Social Security is going to tell you you don't qualify. You have too much income. So if you're under the asset thresholds and the income coming into your house is minimal, it's worth at least applying, as long as, again, you've got conditions that are preventing you from working. The countable assets to that 2,000 and 3,000 threshold do not include one home that you live in and one car that you or your family members drive. It does not include household goods and personal effects, does not include life insurance policies with a combined face value of $1,500 or less, does not include burial plots or spaces for you or your immediate family, does not include $1,500 in burial funds for you and your spouse's burial expenses, does not include property used in a trade or business, does not include, these two are important, does not include money and property that is set aside under a plan to achieve self-support, a PASS plan, and it does not include up to $100,000 of funds in an ABLE account that is established through a state ABLE program. Okay, so that is all very important, that those assets do not count towards the $2,000 and $3,000 thresholds. So yes, you may qualify for Social Security benefits if you have never worked, Social Security disability benefits. You must be disabled and unable to work for a period of at least 12 months. You must have minimal income and assets as required by the SSI program. However, there are also other avenues that you may be able to get Social Security benefits if you have never worked. Those include through disabled adult child benefits if one of your parents is deceased, disabled, or retired, or through widow or widower's benefits if your spouse has passed away. Disabled adult child benefits are paid on the parent's Social Security record, and they are payable to an unmarried adult child who has a qualified disability that started before age 22 and can be proven. So that's often difficult too. And of course, they also have to meet the strict definition of disability by Social Security. Widows and widowers benefits may be payable to individuals who are 50 or older with a qualifying disability. Okay, so those are the other two potential alternatives to qualifying and receiving Social Security disability benefits if you have never worked. The most common avenue that I come into contact with is going to be the SSI program. I do want to chat for a minute about, I unfortunately field a lot of calls from stay-at-home parents. It was historically stay-at-home moms, but now starting to also hear from stay-at-home dads as well. They don't work. They haven't worked, and they were focused on raising children, and their spouse does still work. However, they now have a medical condition that is preventing them from working at all. And the kids maybe are in college now, and so they could use a little bit of extra money to help pay for books or tuition or whatever. I get calls a lot about what might be available. And unfortunately, if the household income and assets exceed the SSI thresholds, and there's no way to prove disabled adult child and your spouse is still working, widower's benefits are not available. Unfortunately, there's kind of I call it a donut hole that you fall into. And so for those individuals, unfortunately, Social Security disability is not often an option. And so, if I'm not a financial planner at all, if I was, I would harp on planning for disability for stay-at-home parents. So if there are any stay-at-home parents on the live, if there are any stay-at-home parents on the replay, you can always reach out to us, reach out to Social Security to see if it's something you might qualify for. But unfortunately, that tends to be a pretty big swath of people that just kind of falls into that hole of ineligibility for either program. And it breaks my heart every time I talk to somebody about it, because it is so difficult. But this slide right here is kind of the how you can qualify for Social Security disability benefits if you've never worked. Like I said, it's going to be predominantly through SSI, which does require income and asset restrictions. And then if not, the disabled adult child could potentially be an avenue, as could widows and widowers benefits. All right, so now talking about how can an attorney help you? So we close out all of our webinars this way. I always try to remember to preface it with, this is not everything that we do, but this is kind of the most common activities that we do that I field questions about. So we, of course, provide guidance on what correspondence from Social Security actually means. We can discuss what Social Security is looking for in certain forms. We as a firm make a practice of not filling out the form for you. There are certain instances where we will help you if you have extenuating circumstances and for some reason you cannot do it yourself. There are also certain forms that we do work with you on to make sure they are done correctly. But as far as the function reports, the pain questionnaires, things like that, you'll know that better than anybody. You live it every day. No matter how much, you tell us and how much we can empathize and sympathize and read the medical records and understand it from that perspective, we don't live it. We file any necessary appeals if you are already a client of ours or if you reach out to us in enough time to allow us to do so. We do review the medical records in the case file. We can discuss what additional records might be helpful in your case if you have medical care as an option and you've got a supportive team of doctors. We can review documents for accuracy and completeness. Again, that's kind of more the supplemental questionnaires and the adult function reports. We don't fill those out. We don't know what you live through on a daily basis, but it is something that we can take a look at and see to make sure that you're not sugarcoating or over exaggerating anything. We do work with you to provide relevant updates to Social Security and then back from Social Security to you. If you are at the hearing stage, we do prepare you and any potential witnesses for the hearing before an administrative law judge. And then, of course, during the hearing, we do question you and any witnesses during that hearing to give the judge a better understanding of what it is you go through on a daily basis. And here is our contact information. As promised, there's our phone number. It's our email address, not our website, I'm sorry. But that's easier to get in touch with us anyways. So feel free to give us a call, send us an email. We'll go ahead and drop the link to schedule a call again in the chat on the live, and it will be down below on the replay. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if it's something that we can help with. If it's something that we can't help with, we do try to connect you with a resource that can. So always feel free to reach out. And like I said, if it's not something that we can help with, we'll try to point you in the right direction and get you on your merry way. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your